What crime was so monstrous that even the brutal Roman Empire believed simple death wasn't punishment enough? Welcome to a journey into one of the darkest corners of ancient Roman justice. Among the many brutal punishments Rome devised, none was more chilling or symbolic than the Poena Cullei, reserved exclusively for those guilty of parricide, the murder of one's own parents. This horrifying sentence involved sewing the condemned alive into a leather sack, alongside a deadly mix of wild animals, then casting them into the river to drown. This wasn't just execution. It was a ritual designed to erase the criminal from both society and memory. Today, we'll explore the origins, symbolism, and terrifying reality behind this ancient penalty that shows just how far Rome went to protect the family and uphold order. Stay with us. In a world known for crucifixions and gladiatorial executions, one penalty still stood out: Poena Cullei, the penalty of the sack. Reserved for the crime of parricide, killing one's own parents, this punishment wasn't just about death. It was about total erasure. In the Roman mind, parricide wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was an assault on the very soul of civilization. While treason and rebellion shook the political order, parricide shattered the sacred unit of Roman society: the family. The father, the paterfamilias, was not just a parent but the living embodiment of Roman authority, tradition, and honor. To kill him was to commit a crime against nature itself, and for that the Romans had something special in mind. The legal foundations of this horrific sentence trace back to the Lex Pompeia de Parricidiis, a law likely introduced during the late Republic under Pompey the Great. Though similar punishments existed earlier, this law formalized Poena Cullei, enshrining it as the ultimate punishment for the ultimate betrayal. The Romans were not merely interested in ending a life, they wanted to unmake the criminal entirely. Unlike the battlefield executions or swift beheadings handed out to traitors, Poena Cullei was theatrical. It was methodical. It was spiritual annihilation. So what did this punishment look like? It began with the condemned being scourged, whipped in public, humiliated, and stripped of all legal protections. This act symbolized their removal from Roman society. From that point on, they weren't just criminals, they were outcasts. No citizenship, no honor, no identity. Next came the sack. The condemned was sewn into a large leather sack, the cullis, but they were never alone. They were packed inside with a terrifying mix of animals. This part wasn't random. Each creature had symbolic meaning, chosen to represent chaos, betrayal, and shame. Roman legal texts, especially the Digest of Justinian, describe the standard lineup: a dog, a snake, a monkey, and a rooster. Each animal played a role in this macabre ritual. The dog, usually man's companion, was seen by Romans as impure and scavenging when removed from human control, symbolizing dishonor and decay. The snake, cold and silent, was a universal sign of betrayal, perfect for a person who had turned against their blood. Then there was the monkey. Though rare in Rome, it was not seen as funny or cute. It was disturbing, an imitation of man, a grotesque reflection of what a human should be. To be confined with a monkey meant being stripped of your humanity entirely. Finally, the rooster, especially a black one, represented chaos, confusion, and bad omens. It was often used in sacrifice, a creature whose frenzied crowing could signal doom. Together, these beasts turned the sack into a twisted symbol of cosmic disorder. This was not just punishment, it was the symbolic unmaking of a human soul. The entire ritual mocked birth itself. The sack, instead of being a womb of life, became a tomb of disgrace. The river into which it was thrown, the Tiber in Rome or other rivers in the provinces, was not a place of release. It was a watery grave that denied the criminal even the dignity of burial. And this was no small matter. In Roman belief, a proper burial was essential for the soul's peace. Without it, there was no afterlife, no remembrance, no name passed down. To drown in the sack, unknown and unmourned, was to be erased from time itself. Inside the sack, panic and violence took over. The animals, terrified and trapped, would likely attack each other and the human in their midst. There was no control, no mercy, only darkness, suffocation, and frenzied death. The killer of kin was devoured by chaos, denied earth and fire, and consumed by the river. This wasn't simply execution, it was erased. Roman justice wasn't always about reformation or deterrence. It was often about preserving the sacred order of things, and parricide was the ultimate threat to that order. But how long did this punishment last? Surprisingly, not forever. Though feared and enforced for centuries, Poena Cullei eventually fell out of favor. The shift didn't happen overnight, but by the late 3rd century CE, the punishment was becoming rare. Why? Part of the answer lies in the rise of Christianity. As Rome transformed from a pagan republic to a Christian empire, its legal system changed too. Ritualistic punishments tied to Roman religion and ancient symbolism began to fade. Early Christian emperors, starting with Constantine the Great in the 4th century, promoted new ideas of justice. Ones focused more on the soul, forgiveness, and simpler executions. Interestingly, Emperor Hadrian briefly revived Poena Cullei in the 2nd century CE, long before Constantine and the rise of Christian influence. But this move wasn't so much a return to savagery as it was a political gesture. Hadrian, known for his legal reforms and efforts to stabilize the empire, likely saw the revival of this archaic punishment as a way to reassert traditional Roman values. It was a reminder that certain transgressions weren't just criminal, they were blasphemous. Even during his reign, however, the punishment was already a relic of a fading era, more symbolic than practical. The final known legal mention of Poena Cullei comes from the Codex Justinianus under Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century. By then, it appeared less as a legal tool and more as a grim historical footnote. It was remembered, cited, but rarely if ever used. The spiritual tone of the Christianized empire had little room for symbolic animal punishments. Executions for parricide had grown more clinical. Beheadings, burnings, or lifelong exile replaced ritualized horror. The old theater of fear no longer suited the empire's new moral compass. Still, Poena Cullei left a chilling legacy. It revealed what the Romans truly feared, not just betrayal, but the collapse of cosmic and civic order. In their eyes, the family wasn't just a private unit, it was the very foundation of Roman society. The father, the paterfamilias, embodied legal, spiritual, and moral authority. Killing him wasn't simply a crime. It was an act of war against Rome's soul. The punishment didn't aim to reform, it aimed to obliterate. The river didn't just drown the criminal, it washed away their legacy. The sack, filled with snarling animals, wasn't just a death sentence, it was a psychological and symbolic purge. The beasts weren't chosen for randomness, but for what they represented: treachery, madness, chaos. The criminal wasn't merely executed, they were cast out of the human order, consumed by nature's fury and condemned to oblivion. In many ways, Poena Cullei wasn't about the killer, it was about Rome sending a message to itself and the generations to come. Even today, it stands as one of history's most haunting reflections of how deeply fear and morality can shape the justice of an empire. In the end, Poena Cullei was more than just an execution method. It was a message, a warning sent across generations that some acts were too monstrous for ordinary justice. They required something darker, something unforgettable. What does this ancient ritual tell us about Rome's vision of justice? Can a society maintain order without invoking fear? Or do punishments like these reveal the cracks beneath even the mightiest empires? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you're fascinated by the brutal justice of the ancient world, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories just like this.